Hey everyone, welcome to today's video. So take a look at this particular tab. The world debt is $279 trillion. I don't even know how many zeros are there, but this is very high levels of debt. So on today's video, we are going to understand who is it that is giving the world this debt, and more importantly, what is going to happen to you and me in case this debt bubble burst. What is the likely outcome? And finally, we will understand more as to how we can use debt to make money. I will show you some excellent options. Also, a very quick shout out for our sponsors for today, which is Wint Wealth. They are an excellent bond investment platform. They come up with new assets which you could consider investing in. I'm linking the tabs in the description box. You can go and check it out. So let me first and foremost take you to my screen and show you a split of the layers of debt that exist on the world. And here is the data from IMF, and they have bifurcated this debt really well. So here are some macroeconomic numbers. So you can see that this tab in orange, it indicates the public debt. So this is the government debt that is there, and it has been constantly going up. And COVID-19 and global financial crisis were times when there was a sudden spike in the debt. So you can see this from here, that there was a sudden spike here and there was a massive sudden spike here. So government borrowed a lot of money, and this orange tab indicates an upward trending curve in form of debt that is there on the world. Now, the second layer of debt is the private debt. Now, this could comprise of corporate debt. This could comprise of household debt. So, household debt would mean the debt taken by people like you and me. So, that will be household debt. But private debt would be debt taken by companies. For example, when companies like ITC, HUL, Nestle, they come out with their bonds, not equities. When they come out with their bonds, they are taking what? They are taking debt. So debt in simple words means loans. So when you and I go and take a loan from the bank, what are we doing? We are simply borrowing money on which we have to pay a rate of interest. Similarly, when these corporates issue bonds, what are they doing? They are taking debt, which is a loan from whom? From public, large institutional payers, etc., etc. Now the point to be noted is that the public debt, that is the government debt here, it's going up. Private debt, it is going up. Household debt, it is going up. So what is happening? Why is the world taking so much debt, and who owns this debt? So let us have a very brief conversation around that. Now let us first and foremost understand government debt. So as we saw from the previous chart, I am putting it up here. You will see that the government debt is going up. So are all government debts the same? The answer is absolutely not. For example, when you consider countries like US or China, what happens there is that in US and China, the majority of the debt is taken in own currency. What do I mean by that? That for example, you will see that US has like trillions of dollars of debt, but in what currency do they have that debt? They have that in US dollars. So what does that mean? It simply means that US is printing money and giving itself a loan. So that is called as owning debt in your own currency. So this is the first type of debt, and this is for obvious reason less problematic. So the majority of the debt that you see on US or China, that is driven in its own currency. The second layer of debt, or the second type of debt, is called as external debt, which is taken in external currency. When it comes to countries like Turkey, so currently Turkey is going through a massive macroeconomic recession. Why? Because majority of its debt was taken in US dollars term. When global pandemic hit, these countries which have a lot of external debt, their macroeconomy collapsed, and as a result they started defaulting, and as a result their currency got even weakened, right? So this was the situation. This type of a crisis, I'm oversimplifying here, it's a type of a balance of payment crisis. Something similar we saw in the year 1991 in India, when India underwent a balance of payment crisis. Why did we go? Because we had a lot of external debt, and after that our country started instituting what is called as LPG reform. So let me know in the comment box what does LPG means, and it does not mean liquefied petroleum gas. No. So there is a specific full form of LPG. Let me know in the comment box what does that. But to cut the long story short and simplify this entire concept for you, that if a country is owning debt in its own currency like US and China, that is not that big a deal. But if a country is borrowing money externally, then that can lead to a lot of crisis. Now comes the obvious question that Akshat, then why is it that not every country like India prints infinite amount of currency, Turkey prints infinite amount of currency and give itself a debt? So it's like Obama giving Obama a medal. So that's a funny picture for you, but that depicts the debt situation. Now there is a very detailed macroeconomic viewpoint that I can present to you, but to simplify things, here is what happens. For example, if a country like India decides to print insane amount of money, then we would have something called as sovereign risk. So sovereign risk in simple terms means that our economy, India's economy, is not as strong as US economy or China's economy. So the world will consider India to be a very risky investment decision, because imagine this, that if there is a US entrepreneur, if he or she wants to invest $100 in India, then they will think that, hey, you know what, India is printing like mad money and the Indian economy might collapse. So let me rather keep my money in the US itself. Now, the opposite question you might ask me, that, okay, why is it that US can get away by printing insane amount of money? Because US is the reserve currency of the world. You can't abandon US unless you can find another economy that is growing stronger than the US. Then in that stage, US will be more frugal in terms of how it prints money. Now, this is depicted from the IMF data also, and let me show this to you. So you can see that this is the world debt. That is how much it has grown by, this entire difference between this blue line and orange line. But what about advanced economies? So advanced economies have taken more debt, right, compared to anyone else. This orange chart shows the amount of debt that has taken. But emerging markets, here if you see the difference, this difference in blue is not that much compared to this green color. Why is that? Because advanced economies like US and China, they have taken more debt by printing their own money in 2020 compared to India. India or other emerging economies do not have that type of a clout where we can go and print insane amount of money. But on the flip side, China and the US have insane amount of clout. Therefore, they are printing currencies like anything, because the entire discussion boils down to they are printing so much money because they can and India can't. So that's the simple macroeconomic thought process. Now you might say that, Akshat, don't you think that this is a problem, that we are here and this is a small debt bubble, but over time this has become such a big bubble? Don't you think that this bubble will burst at some stage? What will happen then? And can you comment if this bubble can get back to a smaller shape? Will that ever happen? The answer is theoretically yes, it can happen. And there are three ways in terms of dealing with this high debt problem. So one is that the governments will need to increase the taxes, because once the government increases the taxes, they will make more money and they can repay the debt. To whom? In countries like US and China, they will repay themselves. And in countries like India, they will repay the IMF and other developed economies from whom they have taken debt. Now, here is the funny part, that here are the taxation rates for a country like India. We are already hitting 43-44% mark in terms of taxation. Do you think that people will be okay paying more than 50% taxes? Let me know in the comment box. I'll be highly surprised. Second thing on which the entire world is banking on is that new things. For example, yesterday I had made a video on blockchain. Please go and check it here. So new productive things like blockchain technology and bunch of new innovations around tech will make the world more productive. So it is like that your salary is 100,000 and suddenly you become very productive and your salary from 1 lakh becomes 5 lakh. So this is what the world is banking on, that if currently the world's salary is 1 lakh rupees, it is hoping that by using these new technologies like blockchain, advancement in healthcare, bunch of other good things, they will be able to increase their productivity. That is, they will be able to increase their salary, and as a result, they will be able to repay this debt or the loan that the world has taken. Third and the easiest option is that, you know what, let's just print, let's go mad, print everything and let the future generations deal with it. So this is what is happening right now, and this continues to happen. So every time you hear Joe Biden saying that, you know what, we have raised the debt ceiling, it simply means that, you know what, future generations, this problem is yours. Now go and figure out a solution. So these are three ways in which the world is currently dealing or not dealing with this problem. And these are the tools that it is using. I genuinely feel that this taxation option is very difficult. This productivity option is our only hope. How much stuff are you going to push on the future generation? This situation is also going out of control and people are getting a whiff of this. How will it play out? Very difficult for me to predict. Will the debt bubble burst immediately? It doesn't seem so. And I'm very hopeful that this productivity results will go up in the future and will generate good results for us. That is the only logical hope on which I am also banking. So in what situation will the debt bubble burst? If people lose confidence on US dollars, or if people lose confidence on the Chinese economy, or if people lose confidence the way it happened on the Turkish lira. That is precisely what happened, that there was a debt default, so to say, in the Turkish economy, and people abandoned lira altogether. People moved to cryptocurrencies, people moved to US dollars, euros, whatever they could get their hands on. So till the time the world believes that US is not going to default, it's just a belief system. So till the time the world believes that US and China are not going to default, this debt bubble is going to stay intact in the advanced economies at least. What is the likely scenario? According to me, I feel that a lot of bad economies are going to evaporate, as they are already evaporating. There will be restructuring of those economies entirely. So back a few years ago, there was crisis in Zimbabwe. Why? Because it was a weak country. Similarly, other weaker countries right now, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Turkey, are going through a macroeconomic collapse because the economy is weak, the leadership is weak. Now, if this debt problem extends further, even if it is created by US and China, countries like India will get impacted more compared to US or China. Is that fair? I don't think so, but that is the reality of the world. Now comes the final section, that how can you use debt to make money in this environment? So there are three specific options. So one is that you go and invest in bonds right now. The reason is that the Feds are hiking the bond interest rate in the bond market, and the bonds will become a lucrative option. So keep an eye out, and you can use platforms like Wint Wealth to scan through those options. Option number two, you can take a home loan. Now, I'm not someone who advocates buying a house. You can check my video here why. But in case you have made up your mind that, okay, I want to buy a house, then right now the debt on a housing loan is very low. So you can make some money, or rather save a lot of money in terms of taking a home loan. Please make sure that it is not a floating interest rate type of a home loan. That is the second way in which you can save or make money. Now, third and final option is that you can go and take a business loan. Now, banks have excess liquidity. So excess liquidity simply means that all the debt, the US debt, China debt that you're seeing, that is money that has been printed in a way, right? And banks are sitting on a lot of cash. They want to give out that cash in forms of loans. Therefore, it's a great time to be taking a loan. So these are your three options as to how you can make money by participating in the debt market. I hope you enjoyed this brief video. Please give it a thumbs up, and I'll see you tomorrow.